Welcome in, soccer aficionados. It is Saturday, May 27th. We are here with another edition of Edging a Win, and we have four more best bets for you from all around the world in soccer and football, depending on what you call it here and where you are in the world. But before we get to our best bets, have to welcome in the man to my left, your right, doesn't matter what it is, but the face of the program, welcome knower of all things football, eighth in line to become the next king of England, and a man who secretly loves the Cleveland Browns more than he wishes to admit, Mr. Ian Allen of Ian OUFC. How you doing this morning, Ian?
What an introduction. I couldn't ask for anything more. I feel like the Cleveland Browns MVP LeBron James with that sort of introduction. Matt, great to be here as always. The season's coming to a conclusion. We've got 1 week left in the likes of Spain and Italy and France. You've got the final weekend of the Premier League. We've got a huge showdown in Germany. If you would have been a fly on the wall before we went live, Matt was rewriting the whole rules of football, talking about monster truck rallies, having players having to run around bases when they score. It has been crazy, but let's focus on the football. We've got some great bets, and let's get into it.
We do. We have a great show lined up for everyone, and stick around to the end where I'm going to give you my MLS over bet of the week. I've only lost once in the last 5 weeks. We'll try to get another winner. So without further ado, Ian, let's dive into your best three bets of this upcoming weekend. And I think we're going to start with Ligue 1, if I'm not mistaken, with the good one here.
Yeah, Premier League obviously start. All the Premier League games are tomorrow on Sunday. Everyone's playing at the same time. So we're going to have a look at Ligue 1 for the bet for today on Saturday, which is going to be Rennes versus Monaco, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we're looking at goals in this one, over 2.5 goals. It is a pretty big game for sides fighting to play either in the Europa League or the Conference League next season. You've got Rennes, who are in 6th. You've got Monaco, who are in 4th. But you have the form of the two sides is extremely polarizing. Rennes, who are a good side at home, traditionally have carried on their good home form this season. They've won 4 of the last 6. And as I said, they are a very good side when they play at home. Monaco, just like what we saw last season, are falling flat on their face as they reach the finishing line. They have been struggling. Just 2 wins in their last 6 games, and they've got a really poor defense. They've conceded so many more goals than all the other top sides around them. Rennes, put in that way, Rennes really are the side that want to win this game to try and get into the Europa League rather than the Europa Conference League. So they're going to go for it. Monaco are not a side that can just sit back and rely on their defense because they have to go and fight fire with fire. So I see you've got both sides going to attack and try and win this game. Earlier on in the season, it was 3-2 to Monaco. And usually when these two sides meet, there is a lot of goals. So, personally, outside of this bet, you might want to stick a couple of bucks on Rennes to win on the money line. But the smart money is on over 2.5 goals. And that is my first bet this week.
Yeah, good bet. I love it. And in France, near the end of the season, I've seen a little uptick in goals just because, the standings have kind of played themselves out. Can you summarize what's going on right now in the standings? Did PSG officially win the league?
Oh, Matt, one of the things we talked about what we talked about off air, and one of the things Matt's been talking about is all these dead rubber games at the end of the season. And unfortunately, there is a lot of that in France. PSG, clear winners. At the top of the league. The Champions League places are all sewn up as well, with Lens in 2nd and Marseille in 3rd. So then you've got this battle, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, Monaco, Lille, Rennes, and Lyon, who've had a really poor season in there. And then down the bottom, just one place to play for. You've got Angers, Ajaccio, and Troyes, who are already relegated. So then you've got Nantes, Auxerre, and Strasbourg, who still can be relegated, but it's more likely to be between Auxerre and Nantes.
Awesome, I love it. I love the over in this Ligue 1 match. But listen, let's talk about really the last week of the Premier League. That's what we're all here for today. And there's not too many games. We did talk off air. I'm a little pissed off that the Premier League never has good games the last week of the season. But this first one we're going to talk about, is a good one because it has the opportunity for a big club to go and get relegated. And what do you see here in Everton and Bournemouth?
Look, he supports Chelsea, the Cleveland Browns, and the Cleveland Guardians. So he's always quite high level of pissed off, even at the best of times. So it has to be something special that ticks him over the edge. But yeah, the Premier League, we're looking at one of those games down the bottom to sort out the relegation battle. It's going to be Everton versus Bournemouth. All the games are kicking off 11:30 in the morning Eastern Standard Time on Sunday. We're going for goals again on this one. It's over 2.5 goals again. So that, yes, this is where the action is. These are where the only games that matter in a way in the Premier League is this relegation scrap at the bottom of the league. Everton, talk about pissed off, burnt me last week, Matt. 99th minute equaliser.
It was rough.
My Wolves money line bet. Just never saw Everton scoring until Wolves goalkeeper decided to have an absolute mare in that one. But it is Everton who need to win this game. And if they win this game, they are guaranteed to stay in the Premier League. Last season, Everton were in a similar position, and those fans turned Goodison Park into an absolute fortress and really helped drag their team over the line. And I think they'll do the same here. Bournemouth safe in 15th place, but let's give a little shout out, and we'll talk about them in a second. 15th place is a massive achievement for Bournemouth. Everybody would have thought they'd have been the first side relegated. And they've also, their away form's pretty decent. They've won 3 of the last 4, but it's more of the fact of the amount of goals they tend to concede in games as well. Everton need to come out. They can't risk anything. They've got to come out and try and, just put this game to bed and get a nice win and put the fan nerves at rest early in this one. I think there's a good price on this one being over because probably a lot of people think Everton will try and win this one 1-0. I don't think they will. I think they'll go out and try and score goals and make it comfortable. But I do think it's Everton who will win and will survive and will score goals. Over 2.5 goals in this one is my second bet.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think Everton really wants to come out and have a nervy 1-0 lead going into like the 75th minute in this one. I think they're going to want to score maybe 2 goals in the first and then see how the rest of the game plays out. I know we've talked a lot about Everton, being relegated this season. I actually am rooting for it. I just want to see a big club go down and see what happens next year. I know they're the favorites here to win this game, but I do want to talk about Bournemouth. Most people had the Cherries getting relegated this season, as you mentioned. They're in 15th. They're not going to be relegated. They're going to be back next season. What is up with this team, and what are they going to do moving forward?
I mean, moving forward, probably they're always going to be probably in this perpetual position where they're just fighting to survive and stay in it. And so it's kind of difficult to really see them ever really moving out of that bottom of the league kind of territory, just because of the size of the club and the size of the stadium doesn't really give them the opportunity to really attract the elite players. But for them to come into the Premier League and to stay up, get what they did for many years under Eddie Howe is a superb achievement for Gary O'Neill. He's not the first choice manager. They sacked Scott Parker earlier on in the season, who's the guy who got them promoted. So Gary O'Neill has done an amazing job to keep this side in the Premier League with the likes of bigger clubs like Everton, Leeds, Leicester, all finishing way below this Bournemouth side. And if you put pound for pound, Gary O'Neill's probably arguably the manager of the year. I mean, would Pep Guardiola, would Jurgen Klopp be able to take this Bournemouth side and keep them in the Premier League? Would he have been able to do a better job than what Gary O'Neill's done? I think they've done a superb job. They will need to improve their defence. 70 goals this season is, I think, the most in the Premier League, which is really unusual. I think that's not happened for a long time, that the side that's conceded the most goals has stayed up. Usually they are relegated for sure. So they will need to improve their back line. It does look like they are losing one of their key players in Jefferson Lerma, who's going to go maybe to Crystal Palace. But they've still got the likes of Dominic Solanke, Marcus Tavernier in there who've been good players for them. And they will need to definitely strengthen their ranks if they're going to have another crack at staying in the Premier League. But probably they're going to be a lot of bookies' favourites to get relegated next season as well.
From a betting perspective, I can't stand Bournemouth. That's on my do not bet team. Just a correction, 70 goals, yes, they do have, but Leeds has 74 conceded on the season.
Okay.
And actually, Southampton's right there with 69, and Leicester is with 67. That's a good segue here because I know your third bet, you're looking at the other game that has to do in the relegation spectrum on this weekend. Leicester City, West Ham. These are the biggest two games of the weekend, really. What do you see in this one?
Yeah, I mean, just like what we talked about with Everton, Leicester are in a position where they just simply have to win. It's Leicester versus West Ham. Again, it's 11:30 in the morning tomorrow, and everybody assumes that Leicester are going to win this game, but I'm going differently. I'm going for West Ham on the money line in this one. Everton's situation is that if Leicester have to win this game to force Everton to do something, right? So that puts Leicester in a position where the only thing it puts clarity in their mind if they've got to go out for a win. But I don't think they're going to be able to do that. This isn't a very good Leicester City side, and a lot of people are going to point to West Ham resting players, nothing to play for. They've got a Europa Conference League final coming up, which is going to be their main focus. But that is not happening for another 10 days till after this game. So I don't see why David Moyes is going to rest his players and give them that much time off ahead of a final. So he's going to play a pretty good side, I would imagine. And he's not the sort of manager that's going to take a side to any Premier League side and just say, go through the motions. He's 100% going to want his West Ham side to go out there and win. I don't know if you saw Leicester Newcastle, but Leicester played one of the most disgraceful games I've ever seen. 0-0 draw, and they basically didn't attack until the final 2 minutes of the game. They had one shot on goal in the very last minute, and they basically just played for a 0-0 draw, and they got it. And I thought that was a pretty gutless display from Dean Smith. And people have praised that and said that they've set them up well because a win on the final day might keep them up. But if Everton win, Leicester have screwed anyway. So I didn't see the point in it. I don't think Dean Smith's a particularly savvy, good manager. And I don't think Leicester are going to get anything. I do think it's going to be West Ham who come away with a victory in this one. And deservedly so. Leicester are going to get relegated.
Yeah, in America, we talk about being able to control your own destiny, Ian.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
With a win last week, Leicester did control their own destiny, and that might come back to bite them in the butt. Just to summarize league standings here, we all know Southampton's going down. But Leeds, Leicester, Everton, those are the three fighting for one spot up and to stay up in the Premier League. Anything that pops out in the standings?
Well, those are the games, aren't they? Really, everything's been. I mean, just to run through it. I mean, Man City. Most people probably know won the Premier League. Arsenal, Man United, and Newcastle are the other three sides in the Champions League. Liverpool, Brighton in the Europa League. There is a Europa Conference League battle, 7th place. Woo! Between Aston Villa, Tottenham, and Brentford. And to be fair, if Brentford got that would be a huge achievement for them. And so it is this scrap at the bottom between Everton, Leicester, and Leeds. Massive shout out to Nottingham Forest beating Arsenal last weekend to secure their Premier League status as well. But yeah, so Everton got this kind of fortuitous point last weekend, and people were talking about how Leeds and Leicester could have gone above it or gone level with them and really put Everton in trouble if they'd have won. But of course they didn't. Neither one of those sides got a victory. And I mean, Leeds just look so bad defensively. I just can't see. I mean, they got to play Tottenham, and Tottenham are crap in defence as well, so you never know. But personally, I just think Everton are going to win, and so it puts it all to bed, really. And usually in these games where everybody plays at the same time, news of the other games filters through.
Yeah.
So I think wouldn't be surprised if Everton are winning. Leicester know that. And so that creates a bit of a deflated atmosphere in the stadium. And that also makes me think West Ham might go on and win that game. Yeah,
well, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time, all the Premier League games. Again, to summarize Ian's three best bets for this weekend. Ligue 1, he had Rennes and Monaco over 2.5. Everton, Bournemouth over 2.5, and West Ham on the money line. But there's a ton of games going on this weekend, and actually, in about 15 minutes, we're kicking off some games in Germany. What else do you like around the world, Ian?
Yeah, well, that's the place to be, isn't it? That's the place to look at. Is this title run in Germany? I didn't put it in any of the bets just because it's so close to when we're doing this one. I didn't. I just wanted to like maybe give people time if they watch it afterwards to kind of see our predictions. But it's those top two, and it took a huge swing last weekend with Bayern Munich at home to RB Leipzig, 1-0 up, ended up losing that game 3-1, opened the door for Borussia Dortmund, who went to Augsburg, struggled a little bit. Augsburg had a red card. They were just sitting everybody behind the door, but eventually Dortmund broke that door down. Amazing story, man. I don't know if you know about Sebastian Haller, Dortmund striker, came back from testicular cancer this year.
Wow.
So amazing story.
The only Sebastian I know is from The Little Mermaid, so I think we're talking
Okay.
about two
Well,
different
I know
people.
you like. I know you're going to do your movie review of that new film. So, a great story for him. I mean, it's nice that he's coming back and might be able to get Dortmund to their first Bundesliga title. I think since like 2016 or something like that, maybe even before that. But Dortmund are at home to Mainz. Bayern are away at Bochum, so you would expect both of these sides to win the game. I can't. It's just whether Dortmund get those nerves and those jitters, and might open the door for Bayern Munich. But I would just love it. It could be the end of Bayern Munich's 10 years of dominance in the Bundesliga, and I think everybody would love to see that happen, unless you're a Bayern Munich fan, obviously. Let's move into the EFL. EFL playoffs this weekend. The one today, Coventry versus Luton. I think it's maybe. What was the time on that one? What's the time on that? Your time?
I think that's right around 2 o'clock our time. 2:40.
Cool.
No, I'm sorry, 11:45. It's earlier. Well, 11:45.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They call that one like the £100 million game, just because that's what's on stake with anybody who goes up to the Premier League. So huge game in that one. And then tomorrow you've got Carlisle versus Stockport. I know you'll be hanging your hat on the go on, you Carlisle boys, in that one. And Monday is that League one with South Yorkshire derby, Sheffield Wednesday versus Barnsley. Moving on to Wednesday, you do have the Europa League final, Sevilla versus Roma. You almost got the kind of what's the immovable force, unbeatable object with Sevilla and Roma. Jose Mourinho loves to just kind of backs to the wall. I think the semi-final game they went through and they didn't have a single shot on goal in the whole game. So that kind of shows you what Mourinho is probably going to do in this one. But Sevilla have this huge love affair with the Europa League. I think that might be like the 4th or 5th time they've won it, which is a massive achievement for them.
You know, something we didn't talk off air on that I meant to bring up and yell at you about is why are we playing a final on a Wednesday? Like, come on, man. Put that on a weekend.
Well, they've only recently changed the Champions League final to a weekend. That was always a Wednesday. Maybe only in the last 5 or 6 years has that's changed to a Saturday. But they don't obviously put the same value on the Europa League and the Conference League finals because those ones are played midweek.
All right, enough about the world soccer news. That's just pissing me off today for some reason. We're going to get into the best league of the entire world, and that is the MLS. And Ian, St. Louis City SC finally got back to their winning ways with a 4-0 victory over Sporting KC this past weekend, and they did it without Klaus. They're back now in the 3rd spot in the Western Conference with 2 games in hand actually over Seattle and just a point clear of them. It does appear, I did just see news today, Klaus will not be playing tonight. He is going to miss his 5th game in a row as St. Louis SC takes on Vancouver at home this week. Ian, I was surprised but also delighted. You were up at 2 a.m. watching our beloved St. Louis team. What did you think of the match?
I mean, I think that they played very well. I mean, comparing it to the game they had the week before against Chicago, where I thought they were probably the poorest they've been this season. I thought they bounced back really nicely. I thought the crowd created a good atmosphere, making it into sort of a rivalry game, a derby game. First ever one they've had against Kansas, so they turned it into a special occasion. I think that it shows you this St. Louis side. They're pretty good front runners. When they do get the first goal in a game, they usually get the confidence up and they run out pretty good winners. The difference that they the difference in the side when they played in front to when playing from behind was very, very evident. How much more comfortable the players were rather than chasing a game. They seemed a little bit lost, didn't really have a lot of ideas. So that's something to work on. But also as well, I think they will fancy their chances of being another home win tonight against a Vancouver side. And that Western Conference looks a little inconsistent. So that they're doing pretty well in that one.
It does, and you're right. They do play much better when they're ahead. I think that high press works in their favor when they have a lead. I think other teams get a bit nervy in the back. They don't, they make some bad passes, and boom, it's 2-0 before halftime most of the time. So, listen, before I get into Week 15 of the MLS and my over bet of the week, there's a couple other things that I learned from this past match week. Number one, Cincinnati, by far the best team in the East right now. And possibly they might be right there with LAFC and all the MLS, or even above them. They took on a tough Columbus team, and although it was a 3-2 victory, it was really never that close. They look very good, and I'm just glad St. Louis is not in the East right now. The second thing I learned from last match week, Philadelphia Union, who started off poorly this season, they have now gone 6 weeks unbeaten and have a little bit of an easy schedule coming up and a chance to rise to the top of the East table as they were expected to. So this Philadelphia team who struggled, only had, I think, one win in their first few weeks, definitely looking much better this week. And finally, what is going on with the Seattle Sounders? They have lost 3 of their last 4, and all of those losses were against teams that were below or 500 or below records. That is absolutely nuts. Now, go ahead, Ian.
I was just going to say, there's also what got a lot of media coverage over here was Phil Neville's F-bomb in his press conference. Bit of a meltdown from Neville in that one.
I know, it's crazy. He was the first ever manager of a soccer team to use the F word.
Nice. Yeah, exactly.
So, today, it is match day number 15 in the MLS, and here's what I'm looking at. Number 1, can New England bounce back after losing 2 straight games in the MLS and 3 overall, including that one against the Pittsburgh Maulers or whatever it was? I don't know what their team is. They host a bad Chicago side. A loss surely this week has me doubting that New England is a contender. What will Cincinnati do this week on the road in high altitude? Here's the thing about Cincinnati. I know I just told you I think they're the best in the East, but they're just 1-3-1 on the road. And if you want to be a championship side, you have to play well away from home. But the game that I am really watching in and my over bet of the week is the matchup between the Seattle Sounders and the New York Red Bulls. And I'm taking over 2.5 goals here, which you can get at a great price of plus 135. And I can already see Ian cringe at this bet, knowing that the Sounders have only scored 3 goals in their last 5 matches, and they give up less than 1 goal per game. Now, on top of that, just to add to the fuel to the fire, why maybe you shouldn't take the over, is that the New York Red Bulls on the road are the worst team to bet the over. They are 0-7 on the season to the over, and they just average 1.4 goals per match. But, and there's always a but, Ian. Here's the thing. 4 of Seattle's last 5 home games have gone over 2.5 goals, and 5 of the 8 games that these two teams have played in their lifetime have gone over 2.5 goals. I think the Sounders, this is what I'm banking on really tonight. I think the Sounders are pretty pissed off with how they've performed over the last 4 games. They get things going offensively against a bad Red Bulls team, and the Red Bulls, who haven't put too many goals in, maybe do take advantage of a team that isn't up to standards with the Sounders, and I think we see a 2-1, 3-1 victory here for Seattle. So, take Seattle and the New York Red Bulls over 2.5 goals.
Yeah, well, I like your logic in that one. You've summed it up. You had me on the ropes there, but you've kind of dragged it back pretty well. But also just wanted to give a little shout out to Nashville, doing really well. Second in the Eastern Conference, only 1 defeat in the last 5 games, and they play Sunday evening, I believe. They play home to Columbus, so every chance they could get another win on the board there. And so they're not really a familiar name that punches at the top of the table. I don't think. Ashford.
Yeah, we haven't talked about them much. They are good. They've been on good form. That is a tough game though, Columbus Nashville, and I think that's why it got flexed into the Sunday night time slot, because that is going to be one of the better games this week. So yeah, lots going on. Match week 15 in the MLS. Any other thoughts on the MLS, Ian?
Not really too much. I think you summed it up pretty well. I mean, it's as I say, it's still pretty early stages of the season in some regards. So it's kind of a lot to still be decided. But yeah, just hoping St. Louis can do that back-to-back wins. It'd just be nice to kind of,
especially at home. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want the inconsistency to creep in of like lose a game, win a game, lose a game, win a game.
For sure. Well, that's about it for us here at Edging a Win. But before we sign off, Ian, any final thoughts on the Premier League as a whole this season? I mean, what'd you think as we bring it to a close?
Yeah, I mean, it's odd now, isn't it? Because it's like now you had, for a lot of the season, you had Arsenal fighting at the top of the league, and it was this intriguing battle of what, like, Arsenal haven't won it for such a long time. Are they going to get the job done? Are we going to have a new, well, not new, but a winner outside of Manchester City or Liverpool for the first time in ages? So it felt exciting. But then in the last few weeks of the season, the inevitability has crept back in, hasn't it? And everything's just felt very predictable. And Manchester City have just gone on a tear and won the league really comfortably in the end. So when you talk about these what reforms or things you'd like to see differently could come in to make the end of the season more interesting, I think you have some good points in that regard. Because a lot of the times these final games of the season aren't as interesting as they hype them up to be. But always interest. There's always some interesting twists and turns in the season, and I think that nobody would have expected Chelsea to be as bad as they have, and probably nobody really expected Newcastle to get in the top four. So there has been some intrigue, but wish it would have just come down to the wire.
I think I'm almost getting you onto my side that there should be a playoff system here in the Premier League, and just to piggyback off of all those points, and for our viewership out there, here is the winners of the Champions League over the last decade: Man City, Liverpool, Man City, Chelsea, Leicester, that was the best year ever, Chelsea, and Man City. So 2, 4, 6 champions, or Premier League championships for Man City.
Premier League, not Champions League.
Yeah. So there's just
no
parity.
Again, 2 or 3 of those years that Man City won, at least you did have Liverpool stride for stride with them, making it competitive. And if you'd have taken Liverpool out of it, it would have been absolutely. I mean, Man City would have been absolutely dominating the Premier League landscape, and there is a danger of it turning into a Bundesliga or Ligue 1 situation where you know who's going to win it before a ball's kicked.
I'm going to leave you on this note, and we're going to hop off air. Since 1996, there's only been 4 other teams than Man City to win a Premier League title. So with that said, I am going to go for a future bet. I'm going to take the Notre Dame Fighting Irish next year to win the Premier League.
Well, I mean, how many winners have there been? I mean, there's probably only been 6 winners. Man United, Man City, Arsenal, Chelsea.
If you go back, there's so 96.
No, but in the Premier League, not since it turned into the Premier League.
Oh, what year was
Manchester United, Man United, Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal,
Blackburn,
Leicester, and Blackburn,
and Leeds in '92.
But that wasn't Premier League.
Oh, what year did they turn?
That was the year after Leeds won it.
Okay.
So
I don't know what we're playing for, but that's my cross to bear, and we're going to have to figure out how I'm going to get through that. It's been a great Premier League. I wish I would have seen Arsenal take it down, but as you said, prediction, Man City just took it. So
I have a staunch anybody but Liverpool and Man United policy, so as long as they don't win it, I'm all right.
Fantastic. All right, we will be back next week. It'll be heavily on, I think, Italy, Spain, and MLS, but we will be back, and then we'll see what we go through there. I do think, if I'm not mistaken, we didn't really talk about this, but I think we will be live streaming Champions League Final, maybe? I don't know.
Ooh, we haven't discussed it, but we can do.
Yeah, I was thinking we could do that, so we'll keep you updated on that. In the meantime, sit back, relax. If you're an American, enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. Stuff your face with food because that's all it means. And we'll see you next week.